Thank you so much, Michael. So if you struggle with self-control and have been eating the grapes in the middle of your table, my wife brought our own grapes, which was perfect for me because I could just eat them and not worry about it. Welcome here. As Michael said, my name's Austin. I'm the associate pastor here. And if you were with us last week, you'll know we've been starting a new series called Making Room. And we're looking at the 9 different spiritual disciplines that John Mark Comer has in his book, Practicing the Way. And we're going to be working our way through that. And if you haven't caught on yet this morning we're going to be doing community. Now, community is not the first spiritual discipline that he goes through, but it's the one that we're going through. And part of the reason for that is because I think that Faith River actually does community well in a lot of ways. And so we wanted to start on something that we are doing really well at and really push into it. I was talking to my hairdresser like a week and a half ago, and she knows what I do for work. And so I was saying that I was in a new church. And she asked me about this church, and one of the things I said was, it really likes potlucks. And she stopped and she said, I grew up going to Catholic church, and I really miss those gatherings. I really miss those areas where we just got together and we got to share life together. And it struck me how much people crave to be in community, how much people crave to be loved, to be cared for, and even maybe a little bit challenged in different ways. We're going to be reading in Romans 12 this morning, and if you want to join me in that reading, I'm going to be in the New Living Translation here. Romans 12, starting in verse 1. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind He will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship Him. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith God has given us. Just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. In His grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. And if God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift of showing kindness to others, do it gladly. But don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people, and don't think you know it all. It amazes me that when we read through the New Testament over and over again, it just automatically assumes that people are in community. There's not an overarching amount of commands to be in community. All the conversation is, while you gather, when you come together, there's just this assumption that people will be living life together. They will be growing together. Living, loving each other, and not because they feel like this is a command they need to follow, but because they are working together for a greater purpose, for the greater purpose of the church and for the greater purpose of God. Last Sunday, my wife went shopping, and we found those Yope bottles, those yogurt bottles, and our boys love them, and they were on sale, so my wife got a couple of them. And so Monday morning, Theo asks, "Dad, can I have one of those?" I was like, "Yeah." So I take them out, and I lay out all the different flavors. And he picks one, and so I give it to him. And his little brother, Zach, is 2 years younger, and he already had his breakfast, already decided what he wanted. And so I gather up the Yopes, and I put them in the fridge, and I close the fridge. But of course, now the younger brother wants what the older brother has. He hates his breakfast now. So he starts asking for it, and I'm like, "Okay, bud, I'll get you one." And I turn, and I have my hand on the fridge, and Theo says to me, "Dad, I can just share mine." I was like, "Oh, bud, that's so nice of you. You know, your mom got 2 of every flavor. We can just get him his own. It's fine." And I turn away from him, and I open the fridge, and he got so mad at me. He said, "Dad, I am the big brother, and I can share." It really warmed my heart until they were fighting 2 minutes later. But it made me think that that's what it means to be family, to serve one another, to love on one another. It's not all about him. He wants to offer up. As humans, I think we'd be surprised with how much we need community together, how much we crave community. If we look at the creation story, we see that Adam created Eve. And then in Genesis 2, verse 18, it says, "And God saw that it was not good for man to be alone." And from there, he brings all the animals forward to Adam, and Adam names them each. And then he still doesn't find a suitable helper. And so God creates Eve from Adam. Now, that passage we often talk about during weddings or when we're thinking of marriage. And it goes on to talk about marriage. That's why a man and a wife shall leave their father and mother and become one. But I think it's so much bigger than just talking about marriage. It's talking about our need for people, our need for support. What happened to them it wasn't the only thing God was talking about to be married. He was again saying it is not good for man to be alone. They're made to be in community. They're made to serve in community. If we go to Galatians 6:2, it talks about how carrying each other's burdens. If we carry one another's burdens, that is how we will fulfill the law of Christ. Even if we stick in where we are in Romans, it talks about outshining one another with honor, glorifying the others and not thinking too highly of ourselves. Paul continuously in his epistles says, think of others before yourself. Serve one another willingly. We are the most connected people that have ever been. The average person can be contacted 24/7 through text, phone, email. You can see what your friend on the other side of the world is doing, as well as your neighbor with just one swipe on Facebook. You get to see all the things that you ever wanted to see, and you get to see a whole lot of things that you never wanted to see on Facebook. But we are so overwhelmingly connected. And yet, I would venture to say that we are also the most out of community of any people that have ever been. We are so overwhelmed with these shallow connections all over the place that we don't know what it's like to actually be in community, to share with one another, to tell somebody everything and anything in a group setting. Last week, we looked at the 9 different disciplines, and we talked about the lies that come and the disciplines battling those lies. And with community, the lie that we often can be told is that you don't need anybody. If you're strong enough, you can do it on your own. To need someone, to rely on someone, actually shows weakness. If I can be honest with you, that's one I struggle with, to ask for help from somebody. Truth be told, I was setting up these tables, and I wanted to do it by myself because I didn't want to ask for help from Michael. It's hard to ask for help. It's inconvenient for the other person. I think a lie that we have in the church often, a lie that we have as believers often is that we don't need church. This is a relationship between me and God, and I don't need anybody else. We need each other. Whether it be a formal church, whether it be a group of believers that gather and pour into your life, we are made to grow and heal together. That's how God created us. If we look back at Romans 12, 1-2, we talked about this last week. Being renewed. Being made into the image of Christ. And I like how Romans puts it because it talks about forming ourselves to be more like Christ and less like the world. Guarding ourselves so that we don't become just like the rest of the world and we are molded to be looking more and more like Christ. If we look at verse 9, Paul talks about loving. And this is directly confronting the Roman world and the Roman idea of love. And I would say does a really good job of going against how we think of love oftentimes. I don't know what your translations say, hypocritical love. Let love not be hypocritical. Some of them say, let love be sincere. It puts a little bit more of a positive twist than a negative. But the translation is, let love not be hypocritical, which doesn't really make sense when you think about it. Love and hypocrisy should not go together. But what Paul is saying is, it can't just be about words. It can't be this thing that you talk about in word and tongue. It needs to be lived out. It needs to be shown to one another. Love can't have one eye on what it's going to receive out of this transaction. Love can't be thinking towards the future of what's going to happen that's going to benefit them. Christian love is completely cleansed of self. It's only giving and giving and giving. Proverbs 27:17, we know it well. Iron sharpening iron. We are called to serve the church together as a community, being humble, serving one another. It reminds me of a story of a church leader who was asked, do you feel prideful when you look at all the work that you've done? And they thought for a second and they said, do you think that the donkey that carried Jesus into Jerusalem thought that everybody was cheering for them? No, the next day when that donkey was walking down that same road, nobody was there. And they remembered that without Jesus, I am still just a donkey. In verse 10, Paul uses familial language when he's talking about love, this love of a family, father, son, brother, and sister. And he's giving this illustration of how we are to act as the body of believers. It's actually one of the most used illustrations in the New Testament to talk about believers as a family, the family of God. And to Paul, love went beyond just talking about it. It went beyond just having these words. It went beyond these feelings of adoration. It was living it out. It was helping people out. And to Paul, oftentimes that meant financially. It meant mourning with those who mourn, rejoicing with those who rejoice, living life together, being with people in the highs, being with people in the lows. That is what it looks like to act out love. Now, I was really excited to do tables today in talking about community. We're able to sit around. We're able to partake in the Lord's Supper together. But this whole series is about learning something and then hopefully putting it into practice. And so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to talk at your table in community about these questions. I'm not going to ask you for answers afterwards, but just enjoy conversation. And maybe, Steph, you can find a table. Thank you. I'll give you a couple of minutes and then I'll come back with it. Oftentimes, when I finish my sermon and I'm ready to go, my wife will ask me if I proofread my slides. And this is why. I hope you got the gist of it, though. In community, that is how we grow together. It's also the way that we get healed together. We'll be reading from James 5, verse 16. Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. Again, it's just that assumption that we are doing it together, that we are doing this as a community. 1 Peter 2:9 reminds us that we were once not a people, but now we are a people. We are a people of God, and we are a family brought in together. And we are called to use our gifts for the betterment of the family. And Paul loves this imagery, and he does it also in Corinthians. Not so that one part of the body can be raised. The whole body doesn't work together so that your head can be up here. Instead, the whole body works together so that you can move from one spot to the next, so that your body can move to where it's supposed to be going. That's what it looks like. Barclay says it nicely. He says, the members of the body neither argue with each other, nor envy each other, nor dispute about their relative importance. I found a quote from some of the early Stoics that I thought was funny when we were talking about the bodies. Happy are you if you are serving God and carrying out the great purpose as truly as an earthworm. It's not about what we do in the church. It's about serving with our giftings, not for our own prestige, not for our own glory, but for the betterment of the church and for the betterment of the family. That's what it means to be devoted. The way that Theo wanted to serve his younger brother. If we treated every believer who came into our family that way, can you imagine what it would look like? Fighting over each other to serve one another. This is my brother and sister, and I can share with them. Oh, how beautiful that would be. I want to read Psalm 133, and I think the psalmist does a really good job at talking about what it looks like to be in community, what it looks like to grow together. How wonderful and pleasant it is when brothers live together in harmony. For harmony is as precious as the anointing oil that was poured over Aaron's head, that ran down his beard and onto the border of his robe. Harmony is as refreshing as the dew from Mount Hermon, that falls on the mountains of Zion, and there the Lord has pronounced his blessing, even life everlasting. I also want to be careful because the one thing I disagreed about Barclay's quote is that being in community does not mean that we will always agree with one another. That doesn't mean that we're going to have this, and I'm going to use two different words here. We're not going to have peace, but we are going to have shalom. As Mennonites, we can often mix those two up. When we fight for peace, we mean that we're going to back down and we're not going to cause any disruptions. We're not going to be impolite. We're not going to bring up things that we're uncomfortable with. But instead, it means working out those things with one another. Working out those conversations and those disagreements and those arguments so that we can have shalom together. We can be at peace, complete peace. How Romans 12 begins offering the bodies as living sacrifices to do greater for God, not always for ourselves. For putting the family of God, the body of Christ, before what we want. And then in verse 13, Paul goes on to talk about giving to those in need, to God's people in need, and practicing hospitality. I think another lie that we can fall into, especially in North America, my house is my house. I earned this. I bought it. I don't need to do anything with it. I don't need to share it. I'd say that's very contrary to how God talks about our things. It's also contrary to how the Bible talks about hospitality and loving those around us. Christianity is the home of open hearts, open hands, and open doors. Opening to those in our church, opening to the neighbors, as Jesus would say, or maybe a more challenging one, opening to people of a completely different social class than we are. What does it look like to be hospitable to all people? We can also fall into the trap that thinking that if we are not a perfect community, then we need to go find one. I have a lot of friends who've actually left the church because the church was not the community that they wanted. It wasn't the church that they saw in Acts 2 at the beginning. And in Acts 2, they are doing some magnificent things, and they are self-sacrificing, and it's beautiful to see. But if the early church was perfect, we would be missing 3/4 of the New Testament, telling them the things that they need to figure out, the things that they need to do, the things they need to stay away from. The early church was really good, but it had its problems too. So we are called to be in the community that we are, to be here at Faith River, and to grow and push each other closer to God. We need to find spots where we can do that. I would say personally, I think the best place to do that is life groups. And when I was looking at the tables, it reminded me of life groups at Faith River. Smaller groups within the bigger body. That's what life groups is. And if you're interested in that, you're welcome to talk to myself or Michael or Shirley. We can have those conversations of how we can put you into those groups. Maybe a mentor, someone to talk to. This week, we're talking about the spiritual discipline of community. I wrote spiritual discipline all through here, and then Michael changed it to holy habits today, and so my apologies. They are the same thing. But we're working on the holy habit of community, growing our community ties and growing closer to God in that. And so our invitation this week, as you put this into practice, it was already mentioned, we have a potluck next week. I'd encourage you to stay for that. Invite somebody to it. Have a conversation with the people around your table that goes beyond just the weather or work. Ask them how they're doing, how they're really doing. Ask them how the discipline went this week. Ask them the disciplines that they don't want to do. Have a real conversation with them. Invite someone into your house. Share a meal with them. Check in with them. Ask them how you can pray for them. And here's going to be my challenge, is after both of those, whether it be at the potluck, whether it be in your house, pray for them. Pray together before you guys leave. Spend that time bringing it back to God and actually praying there with them instead of saying you'll do it later. Now, it happened by accident on my part that we are doing communion today. But I was so excited because what better way to celebrate community than in communion? That we are tied together as a family. We remember why we're tied together as a family as we partake together. We remember the death and resurrection of Jesus on the cross. And because he did that, we can be in relationship with him. And as a result of that, we are brought into the family of God together. How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. So I'm going to invite Michael up to do communion, but as we remember, we can be unified in the actions of the cross.